I'm Maya.
And I'm Jasper.
And this is Keep Calm and Carry On, a podcast where we explain the London Blitz.
Today, we'll go over the key information and major events, as well as lending a view over some finer details.
So without further ado, let's get to it!
Before we begin, we would like to give a fair content warning. What we will talk about may contain themes that can be disturbing to some. So, what was the London Blitz?
Good question. Where should we start?
Probably the beginning, to be honest.
The London Blitz was an 8-month-long period where the Germans persistently bombed London. It debuted in London on September 7, 1940, around when World War II had broken out. By the way, the word Blitz is short for Blitzkrieg, which is German for lightning war. Another note, the London Blitz is not the same as the Blitzkrieg.
It all began when the Germans accidentally bombed England, to which England retaliated by bombing Berlin in return. Adolf Hitler, commander of the Third Reich, sought revenge over the British, and thus the Blitz was set in motion.
Hitler's strategy was to quickly hit the British with air raids in order to coerce them into surrendering. At the time, the United States of America, which was not participating in the war, supplied England with goods, as they were allied. However, the British didn't have enough resources to hold against Hitler's attack, and were thus helplessly subjected to constant bombing, especially in London, England's capital.
If you were an average London citizen during the Blitz, there was a very high chance that your home would be destroyed by bombings and that you would be left homeless, as 1 in 6 Londoners were homeless at some point during this period. You would probably spend your nights living in overcrowded public bomb shelters provided by the English government to protect yourself from night bombings. It was disorienting to find a well-known area transformed into a nightmare territory of shattered buildings, horrifying craters, and acres of rubble. Places to which you had attached importance were suddenly no longer there, says Joan Miller in her 1970 memoir, One Girl's War.
Although the English government had numerous public shelters, the majority of people were staying in private shelters, as they tended to have better quality and more sanitary. However, many were not so fortunate as to even find shelter, leaving most wandering the rubble. When writing in her diary, Frances Partridge tells us what the aftermath of a single night looked like. Each night had its incidents: houses demolished, people buried or cut by glass, or with all their clothes blown off, shot up into trees, or starred all over with cuts from glass so as to be bright red with blood all over.
London's East End was home to many poor Jews and foreigners and was a prime target of the Germans. Places such as schools, pediatric hospitals, and orphanages were also frequent victims of attack. It is said that 1 in 5 of England's schools were damaged by bombs, and thus British children's education suffered during the Blitz.
Kids were stuffed in congested classrooms with barely enough stationery and books, which were often short in supply. When interviewed about the Blitz in 2001, Stella Hughes recounts her experience as a child. When the Germans started their air raids, they progressively got worse, and therefore we only attended school on Monday mornings in order to collect books and homework, and this was returned to the school on Friday mornings. Additionally, young male teachers were called to the army, and the job of replacing them fell upon old men who had already retired.
To protect its nation's juvenile population, the British government launched a project that was titled Operation Pied Piper. In short, Operation Pied Piper would relocate children out of urban areas that were often subjected to bombings to places where the risk of attack was low. These safer locations included rural areas in England, but also countries overseas, such as South Africa, Australia, the United States, Canada, and New Zealand. Around 3 million people, most of them kids, were sent out of England on planes. If you've ever read William Golding's The Lord of the Flies, you can observe that the children were sent on an airplane from England, and that it takes place during World War II. It would make sense to say that they were on a trip organized by Operation Pied Piper.
After months of gruesome bombings, the Blitz finally came to a close on May 11, 1941. Hitler's intention had been to break the morale of the British as to pressure their government to surrender. While morale did suffer amid the death and devastation, there were very few calls for surrender. The British stood strong and united despite the hardships they had faced. From a purely military perspective, what had happened during the Blitz was entirely counterproductive to its original purpose, which was to dominate the skies to prevent any British invasion.
As for the aftermath, around 43,000 civilians were killed, and at least 1.1 million houses and flats were destroyed or damaged. There was an acrid overtone from the high explosive, which the bomb itself contained, a fiery constitutive smell, almost invariably too. There was the mean little stink of domestic gas seeping from broken pipes and leads, said John Strachey in his book Post-D, Some Experiences of an Air Raid Warden. Operation Pied Piper left many children stranded from their homes and disturbed. Many people suffered from anxiety and depression, and bomb neurosis became a common experience post-Blitz. Symptoms of bomb neurosis included a general fatigue, amnesia, and a lack of concentration, as well as other traits commonly associated with automatic nerve imbalance.
And that's the end of our podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
We hope you enjoyed, and we hope that you were able to learn about the Blitz.